Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the zodiac sign Gemini and enemies. And yes, this does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. Well, anyway, people, first thing about Gemini and enemies, well, they often may attract Sagittarius as an adversary because Sagittarius falls on the seventh house cusp in a solar or natal chart for Gemini, and of course the seventh house does govern open adversaries or enemies. Now, it could be somebody that has a Sagittarius sun, moon, or ascendant, or simply somebody that embodies those characteristics in them. It could also be people that have, as far as the profession, that have a Sagittarius-like profession, such as people in theology, religion, church leaders. It could be philosophers, professors, people that are in a law field, such as an attorney, a paralegal, or a judge. People in the travel field, such as a cruise director, or a pilot, somebody that works in the travel agency. And it's easy to understand why Sagittarius would represent that open adversary for Gemini, because Gemini, really is a lot of times they may not tell the truth, not necessarily to be malicious, but just sometimes it's sparing feelings. It could be that, and it's just something with Gemini they're not always known for being voracious. And you have Sagittarius as a sign which is voracious at all costs. Sagittarius, of course, can be brutally frank, honest, outspoken, and downright tactless, while Gemini, well, they'll sometimes say things that just people would like to hear. And Gemini really is will try to outmaneuver and outsmart things, and sometimes this could be the legal system. And of course, Sagittarius is connected with the law, and so you can understand why this could be, a Sagittarius falls on that seventh house cusp. It's really, even though of course, they have the thing in common, being mutable and adaptable, but they are very different. And the next thing is, as far as hidden adversaries or enemies, well, on the 12th house cusp for Gemini in a solar or natal chart, Taurus will often fall on it. And this could be then somebody that has a hidden adversary for Gemini, could be somebody that has a Taurus sun, moon, or ascendant, or somebody that may embody those characteristics or is in a Taurus-like profession. Now, and people ask sometimes, well, why? How do people attract that hidden enemy that's represented by the sign on the 12th house cusp? Well, that's actually a very good question. And the thing about that is, a theory I have behind that is because there's a correlation with the sign that's on the 12th house cusp can often be a sign that has the characteristics that we have difficulty seeing in ourselves. So we have a hard time seeing that hidden enemy that is associated with those characteristics. Now, that's a theory I have behind that. And the thing too is, and of course this could even be people just in financial institutions, with Taurus often on the 12th house cusp in a solar natal chart for Gemini. I joke about this in a way, well, maybe a lot of it's attributed to maybe a lot of Geminis might con Taurus people, and that's why Taurus becomes a hidden enemy. But of course I'm being facetious with that. Now anyway, now keep in mind that the enemies and adversaries associated with Gemini, I don't see them as being restricted just to the 7th house cusp and the 12th house cusp. But also keep in mind that there are two signs that square Gemini by sign, and those two signs, of course, are Virgo and Pisces. Now, Virgo squares by sign, and a lot of this conflict with these signs can be attributed to, I think, the fact that Gemini often superficially will understand or learn something, and then you have Virgo that is so punctilious with details. They want to get all the minute details of something. A lot of times I think with Virgo and Gemini, you could have like this cerebral intellectual warfare, because you have these two signs that are both very intellectual, very cerebral, but they go about using it in a little bit of a different way. Gemini is really the more, I think, on average, the street savvy one. Virgo is more of that book sense type of intellect, and you could have the one person with the book sense trying to outsmart the one with the more streetwise, the street sense, which is Gemini. And the thing too, what happens too, these two people get into some kind of debate or something. What's interesting is it's like, well, you have, on one hand, you have Virgo that can say to Gemini, well, hey, you left this out in your argument, because Virgo will find that detail that Gemini may have omitted. And Gemini may not really care for that, be rebuffed by that. But then you have, on the other side of the coin, Gemini, their mind goes so fast, they might be able to come up with their argument or come to some mental conclusion on something faster than Virgo does, while Virgo is doing the analysis. Now, Gemini might go about it a little superficially and not get into every gory detail, but still come up with the answer maybe faster than Virgo. It's interesting. There was one time when I was in school, there was a friend of mine that has a Gemini moon and Gemini ascendant, and he was playing chess against somebody with a Gemini moon, Virgo sun, and I believe a Virgo ascendant as well. And the thing is, the Virgo ascendant and sun person was like, well, why am I losing? And the Gemini moon and ascendant person was outsmarting him up to a certain point, but the Virgo sun ascendant person ultimately prevailed, and it really was a very tight match, competitive match, and I was not surprised, because obviously these are two of the most intelligent signs of the zodiac. But you have Gemini being the one that's more shrewd, the street savvy one. Virgo is more that pragmatic, practical, and analytical type intellect. Now let me get to Pisces. Well, Pisces and Gemini, the reason they could be adversaries, okay, of course they're square by sign. You could have a fast-talking Gemini bamboozle poor gullible Pisces in a number of instances, and I think what happens is Pisces can irritate Gemini by not coming through for Gemini on certain things they might say they're going to do to help him or her, due to maybe lethargy, inertia, the fact that they want their solitude, their isolation, or what have you. And I mean, Pisces, of course, is also a lot more introverted than Gemini is, and they do have a strong conflict. Pisces more about the emotional side of things. Gemini is the more cerebral, the more objective of the two. So anyway, now is Gemini as an enemy? Well, they might not be as far as formidable in terms of being physical or hurting somebody that way, but it really, Gemini, because they're so quick-witted and street savvy often, they could be very dangerous and very mischievous. They'll find a way to outmaneuver you and do something to you to get at you where something that you would never even think of doing. And I mean, I had one fight with a Gemini rising person one time. It was way back, almost 30 years ago, actually. And the person did to me was, I had a bicycle at the time, and somehow he did something he didn't put a flat in the tire, but in my front tire he did something where he damaged the wheel to a point where it was wobbling when I tried to ride it. So I mean, Geminis, I've noticed something about them. They could be a little bit vindictive, a little vengeful. I think a little bit like Scorpio, maybe not to the same extent. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Scorpio often falls on the 6th house cusp in the daily routine for Gemini in a solar or natal chart. Well, last but not least, I want to get to Gemini. If Gemini is an enemy, and I'm being facetious with this, of course, well, what you do to them, how you can agitate them, talk over them, show more versatility than them, be more well-rounded, talk about more subjects than they do. And if you're in school with them, hey, you score better on a test maybe than them. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Gemini Enemies, and stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about the zodiac sign Cancer and enemies. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.